And you're welcome back to Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday all the way until 5. Remember, football and Off the Ball brought to you by Sky. Get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. You can text us 53106, tweet us at Off the Ball. Listen on News Talk across the country. Also watch us on the digital and social channels. For Periscope and Twitter at Off the Ball, YouTube, Facebook and on the OTB Sports app. Delighted to be joined in the studio by the former League of Ireland and FAI Cup winner Graham Gartland and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Lads, how is the form?
Yeah, good, Johnny. Great to be in. How are you, John?
Graham Gartland has brought in a notepad. I mean, Dan and I, we barely bring ourselves in, and Graham, you've already upstaged us. You've got notes there.
I'm in the journal. I'm in the media game now about 18 months, so just making sure I stay professional in it. Johnny.
How long is Laro in the media game?
Laro's on the line as well. Laro, how are you doing?
I'm looking well. I'm just actually trying to find a pen and a piece of paper now.
It's the bottle of Jameson's behind you I'm worried about, to be honest, Lauro.
No, I'm worried about that because there's not much left.
If anybody watching, the first thing Graham has spotted is, I wouldn't have spotted the Jamesons because I was too more interested in looking at the Adidas number you have on there, Lauro.
It is, yeah, and it's not a freebie before you ask.
Yeah, okay. A good training top.
When did you start in media stuff, Lauro, with Football Focus or Match of the Day?
With radio, which was Radio 2, which is now Radio 5. I think it was 92, 30 years ago.
Just when the Premiership was starting, wasn't it?
Yeah. And my first game was League Cup match. It was Peterborough versus Liverpool, and Peter beat them 1-0.
Wow.
Was that under Souness's era, or was it before that? Liverpool had a spate of kind of in the early 90s. They lost an awful lot of games particularly the FA Cup to lower league opposition.
Yeah, I don't know actually. Would it have been him? Would it have been Roy Evans?
Did they not win the FA?
Roy Evans wasn't there in 92 anyway.
No, they won the FA Cup in 92 under Souness. Yeah.
Well, this programme started really well because Norwich had just scored against my team Preston 1-0, so it's all good.
Haaland's very nearly. Well, Man City have very nearly scored.
We're on Haaland watch here, Lara, as well.
We're on Bazunu watch as well, JD.
Of course, Birmingham have scored against Bristol City. Birmingham won Bristol City 0. And Stoke won Sheffield United 0. So these are the 3 o'clock games. We've got Dan McDonnell from Frankfurt after 4, ahead of the Euros draw from the Irish Independent. And we got Bournemouth, Leicester, Chelsea, Wolves, Man City, Southampton, Newcastle, Brentford. We were just speaking before we came in, Graham, on the panel about coaching and about abusive referees and about kids getting stick and the behaviour of coaches and parents on the sideline, and you were picking up on it.
Yeah, just in terms of the streaming thing where you're putting all the good players onto one team too early, it can actually have a negative effect because none of the players then step up when the game gets tough. It actually negates the fact that you lack leadership then as they get older because they're always looking to the next best player beside them. Where if you can equate the sort of really good players and spread them out between your two groups, what happens is they have to step up and make an impact in the game when it matters, and it teaches them to be that type of person and to handle that pressure that comes with being considered one of the top players. So when you put them all on the same team, by the time they get to a certain age, they're looking around thinking, is it going to be you today, is it going to be me? Where you want them thinking every week, it's me this week. In regards to the referees, I've had good moments and bad moments as a coach with referees on the sidelines, especially underage, and sometimes there is a element of win at all costs at a lot of levels, and when you get to National League level, which is 14s, 15s, 17s and 19s, there is that, well, do you want to win? And especially at the moment I was obviously coaching Shamrock Rovers, there's that element of we can beat Rovers and they go all out, and you have to stand up to that, and sometimes as a coach you nearly have to be right, this is the way it is, but it has to be about development and kids have to play, and again, leaving people on the sideline, why sign them if they're not going to play them? And that's the view I have on it, is if we're signing them at the start of the season, you have an obligation to make sure they get game time, and if you don't feel they should get game time, you don't sign them, and you speak to other clubs and say, look, we've a player here a little bit underdeveloped, if he goes to you for a couple of years, we'll keep an eye on him, report in on him and make sure we monitor him, and that has to be the best for the development of every kid, not just obviously your top players.
Is there an overemphasis on winning in underage Irish football as opposed to developing technical skills?
Yeah. The probably easiest answer is to say the nuance behind that is for loads of different reasons. People think that the more you win, the more attention the team gets. The more attention the team gets, the more you attract teams from the UK to come and look at them. The more money you can make for your club, then because of that, there's more eyes on them. So that's the complicated answer behind it. But the simple fact is, people are saying you need to have a winning mentality. But it's okay having a winning mentality, but you need to have a skill set that allows you to win. Similar to what you said before, build the skill set. And then when that winning mentality comes in, they know which tool to use to win that game. Whether it's, right, I need to dribble more, or we need to pass more, or we need to get together a bit more as a team. You're building all the tools around it, and then they pick which one they use to help them win that game.
Laura, when you were young, growing up in England, was it all about winning? Or skill set? Or developing your skills as a defender?
I think it was more, I think the kind of sort of 14 up to 16, 17 was probably a little bit all about winning. Everybody wanted to win. But I was lucky, obviously, when I went to Preston, where it then changed, where we had a whole host of young players playing in the old Central League. I think I've told you this before. So in those days in the Central League, so you'd play against Liverpool reserves, Everton, Man United, Man City, all those. And what in effect happened with only one sub at the time then. So if you played a midweek game in the Central League against Liverpool, they'd have 6 or 7 fully fledged internationals playing against you in the Central League because they weren't playing on a Saturday. So that obviously changed the whole kind of face of it, where it was just like, trying to stop them sort of winning and trying to improve yourself at the same time. But that for me was a godsend, because I was just like this skinny lad. I was a left winger, John, when I started. And I signed for Preston as a left winger. I thought it was Tommy Hutchinson. I wasn't even his right foot. But and I got changed in the end by playing at left wing for a while. We saw in the reserves, and Nobby Stiles was our player coach, God rest his soul. And we played at Villa on a Saturday, and they had a really strong team out, and we were all kids at Preston, a lot of Scottish boys we had as well, and we were 4-0 down at half time. I think I'd only kicked it 3 times, the ball. And Nobby said to me, he said, come and play with me at the back. Just come and play with me at the back and, see how it goes. And from that day, it was fortunately, I got it. Up until then, I didn't really get it. I thought I was a good player, but I wasn't doing anything in games, and the games were passing me by. And until I did that, and all of a sudden, this penny dropped, and I was off and running.
Was that reading the game, Laura?
I think also not just reading the game, because I started sort of as a left winger. People were tackling me. I wasn't really tackling them. And then as I started to play in there, I suddenly thought, do you know what? I can do this. And obviously the reading the game's a big thing. And then if you have a little bit of pace as well, that obviously makes a difference. But but I mean, the biggest thing of all it, so I was doing this, and we had, do you remember Arthur Cox? You know Arthur Cox, managed
Derby County, yeah.
Derby County, and was at Newcastle with Kevin Keegan and all those kind of things. He was, when I first went to Preston for the coaching at 15, 16, he was the first team coach. On a Tuesday and Thursday night, I would go straight from school to the ground, and we'd have a game next door to there was a pitch right next to Deepdale, play on there, and I'd be like left winger, and he'd play on the right wing. He'd just playing this game, and I sort of thought that was funny. Anyway, he kept kicking me from pillar to post, and him doing that, and then one day I suddenly thought, Jesus, so I kicked him back, and he literally got up, shook my hand, and said, my work here is done, and off he went. And that's coincided with, obviously, then when Nobby said to me, come and play with me at the back, and it just all fell into place.
Did you find it easier with the game in front of you then, from going from a winger, which obviously you're back to the line and looking in a little bit on the game, and the pressure coming from that side of you, then the game just becomes all in front of you, doesn't it?
100%. It was just a completely different game, absolutely, totally. And I just felt great. And then, and then they would encourage me to come out and play with the ball, which obviously, they thought that was a bonus. And because I was quite quick, I'd break into midfield. And then, without me blowing my own trumpet, I went, wow, straight up. I mean, I got in the first team that year. Bobby Charlton gave me my debut. And, he didn't really coach me. He just said, you keep doing what you're doing, And he said, we won't be able to keep hold of you. So when a World Cup winner says that to you and you've got Nobby with you, it's like, you feel almost kind of invincible, for want of a better description.
Patson Daka scored for Leicester 1-0 away to Bournemouth. And Chelsea 0, Wolves 0, Man City 0, Southampton 0, Newcastle 0, Brentford 1. Brentford attempt has gone to VAR, so we'll keep you updated on that. Laro, Erling Haaland, I'm only just going to say the two words and you can take it away from there.
Unbelievable. I've just never seen anything like it, in all honesty. And you've got to throw Foden in there with him. You know what I'm like with De Bruyne. John, I just think he's the best player in the world. Unbelievable to play with. And now he's actually got somebody that he's, didn't play. They played with false number 9 last year at Man City, all those kind of things. And everything about this fella, you just can't see a weakness, but he has this special inert talent, which is, it's almost like when the ball comes into the box, he knows where it's going, which is nothing you can coach. He's just something that he's got. He's a fabulous finisher. He's very, very big and strong. I think his heading will probably be the weakest part of his game, but it's still outstanding. This fella can be anything that he wants to be, and
he's straight through on goal now, and he has hit the post.
He's absolutely useless. How did he not score that? There was just a strange symmetry to that chat you had, Laura. So well put, and Haaland was put straight through, and I was like, here we go. And Bazunu, thankfully, he's saved by his... Like, you're talking... What are we talking, JD? Another millimetre to the side that goes in?
It's just the stride. Like, it's just, as I've said on the show before, a beautiful monster.
He's like Frankel. He's kind of like...
Was the ball played through to him and he ran onto it?
Yeah, exactly, yeah. Just the pace, that, like, just over the first few yards as well.
He's never offside. He's never offside. Timing of his runs is unbelievable.
Like, it's 34, I think, is the record when they had the 42-game season. But it's not like Dixie Dean will have to be worried. 60 goals, 1928, the way this is going.
What was he like, John? Did you see much of him?
Dixie Dean, well, I'm an old relic, Laura.
Laura played against him.
I stopped watching Quantum Leap about 30 years ago. So,
I love Quantum Leap.
So if you get the reference.
He also reportedly achieved a world record in his age category for the standing long jump when he was 5. You can see Haaland.
Did he?
He took part in various sports, including handball, golf, and imagine if he'd taken up golf. Oh my God! Like this, we'd never know. I mean, imagine if he were a good golfer and you were on about him in the same vein as like
Victor Hovland of his country.
Yeah, or Tiger Woods. I mean, it's getting a bit ridiculous, though, JD. He's almost like a parody of himself at this stage, where you see that clip that I mentioned about where he walked back to the kit man before a recent game, and it's kind of, a lot of you will have seen it, but the Man City players kind of just throw their jersey towards the kit man, as you do, but Haaland kind of walks back and very, very respectfully drops the kit man the jersey and almost pats him on the back. That was one thing. But
that'll be his dad.
That could be his dad. But give it, Laura, did you see during the week, he literally picked up the referee's foam can in the middle of play, in the middle of an attack, ran to the referee, gave him the phone can, and then went back into the attack. Now, admittedly, they were 1-0 up or 2-0 up.
It's very superhero, isn't it?
It's just like, I think there was a petition this week to because he's a robot, to get rid of him from the country, and it was signed last look by 1.5 million people, presumably none of them Man City fans. But I don't know, JD. I think for the sake of football, I just hope he doesn't get injured. And when Liverpool play them...
Listen. The Daily Mail will have something about him within the next few weeks.
Yeah, well, let's
not. They'll knock him down. No danger.
Let's not go there.
Like, he does look like something out of the Vikings, or like he just looks like this Nordic, like. I don't know. I'm lost for words.
But Phil Foden, though, as well, like, he's only 22 years of age. The next 10 years for Phil Foden could be... He's the kind of player you would have said 15 years ago, he's going to go straight into the Barcelona team. But the thing about it is, the City's that new Barcelona.
I think what Loro said about them getting injured, I think the days of them getting seriously injured are probably... You've seen that with the longevity of Messi and Ronaldo, who came at an era where the pitches are good, the tackle from behind is outlawed, the high tackles are outlawed, which, that's what obviously does Ronaldo, the original Ronaldo, and does his knee when he's in the middle of being probably the best striker we've seen of his generation. I think you've seen it with Messi's longevity and Ronaldo's longevity. Everything's lined up for these to have long careers, and Foden's another one. He's broke into the team early. I remember Guardiola getting a bit of criticism for not playing him too much because the English press were on him because England wanted him for their first team, and he says, no, we'll use him as we see, and then eventually we'll get him in. And I think Guardiola's handled him fantastically well, but again, a wonderful technical footballer that just sees things, and it's how well he moves his hips and glides around the pitch, but he gets out of tight little spaces. And like you said, you're stopping Haaland, but normally you'd say you stop the source, but you're not stopping the source here with Foden, De Bruyne and all them. You can't stop them feeding him. There's no, again, they just nearly become unplayable at times.
Yeah. It's made watching Manchester City a lot more interesting. That might sound daft because they're a great team to watch, but
it's really interesting with the Champions League now, because can this be the game changer for Pep to stop panicking, and you'll have a fulcrum and you'll have a guy who's probably going to be fresh after the World Cup, which he's not involved in. How is it going to impact the Champions League at the latter stages? Because that's the fascinating thing for me.
They're basically unstoppable when he play. They're basically unstoppable at the moment when they're on their game, in my view, because they have him, and you can't marshal him for 90 minutes. You just can't. No.
Isn't the whole idea of signing him is to win the Champions League?
Yeah.
It's the Holy Grail, isn't it?
Yeah, it's goalless, by the way. Newcastle Brentford's VAR effort was ruled out. Man City 0, Southampton 0. We're watching that. Chelsea 0, Wolves 0, Bournemouth 0, Leicester 1, Pats and Daka at the Vitality Stadium.
They've nearly gotten to 20 minutes here, JD. I mean, this is not bad for Big Gav. You know, it's promising.
Goals in the Championship: Birmingham 1, Bristol City 0. Millwall 1, Middlesbrough 0. Norwich 1, Preston 0. Stoke 1, Sheffield United 0. Swansea 1, Sunderland 0. Just check if that's Michael Obafemi or not, and if he's playing or not today. So we're looking at, no, it's not Michael Obafemi. Just in terms of tomorrow then, Lara, who do you want to see play for Liverpool against Arsenal?
What do you want me to name the team?
Yeah, but because interestingly, he had a very attacking team against Rangers. Should he go that way again? He's been speaking in the press conference about maybe mixing it up, being a bit more unpredictable.
No, I'm just trying to think. I was there as well. No, that would...
They've scored, Man City have scored 1-0 against Southampton.
Why did you rule? They didn't get to 20 minutes.
João Cancelo's got the goal.
What a spoil sport, for goodness sake.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Listen, I think I'd play Henderson on the right, because obviously everybody's now looking at Trent and thinking we can get him behind him and all those kind of things. But Henderson in there as well just stops a lot at source, which will make a difference. They're still not quite right in midfield, John. They're not pressing anything like they did last year, which is a little bit of a worry. But it was only Glasgow Rangers, but it looked like the three major components in the team were all as one, which obviously means you're much more fluent and you're a better side. I don't know whether he might play Firmino. He occasionally throws a Firmino in when you don't think he's going to throw him in. But there is a bit of a different atmosphere there as well at the moment. But
go on. What do you mean by that?
As in, seems to be more positive.
Okay.
Go a little bit. What's happened to Liverpool and all that kind of stuff, and everyone's had the say on one thing and another. And he even came out. Well, he played it a little bit differently the other day, didn't he? But it wasn't. In essence, when they were actually on the field, it wasn't that different. But I think it's a case of getting everybody back to the way that they were, which is this hounding the opposition and winning the ball further up the pitch where they've got the better players.
Where do you stand on the whole Trent thing, Laro?
All day long in the team for me.
Okay.
All day long. He's unbelievable. What he does for the team. The problem is obviously occasionally defensively he makes mistakes, but nobody was talking about it much last year when they were chasing 4 trophies, were they? Still the same player.
I thought that the other night I watched the Rangers game, and the Gulfin class it rendered it kind of hard to figure out where Liverpool were at coming out of the Brighton game. But for me, Laura, which one of the things that struck me about the game was how far Mohamed Salah looked off it. There was no conviction in a lot of the things that he was doing. And he just looked like maybe 90% of the player that he was. And I don't know, I mean, his stats this season have been miles off where you'd expect, but tomorrow's going to be really interesting to see how he plays, because I didn't think he looked anywhere near his best. He was making the wrong choices. His shots were generally inaccurate. They didn't, as I said, he lacked conviction, and I don't know what you made of him.
No, I would agree. And of course, then all the cynics go, "Well, he signed his new contract. He doesn't want to get injured. He's got too much money and all those kind of stuff." But he just loves to score, as everybody knows. I think he's just going through that patch where it's not particularly working for him. You can say Van Dijk's been the same. Van Dijk's been called out on a few occasions. You might actually argue, looking at all of Liverpool's games this season, that their best player has been the goalkeeper. Goalkeeper's been outstanding. Matip's been in a couple of games, and even he's made one or two mistakes. Do you know what? I just think because they played so many games last season, and because they had such a relatively short layoff, I don't know if it was 3 or even 4 weeks, and because of the way that Klopp trains them very, very hard at the start of the season to put all the power and strength in the legs for the season, and that's why they started getting little knocks, little strains, little pulls, etc. But I would say I still think they are 2 players short.
Do you think the team's at the end of its cycle, Loro? Like you would have been at Liverpool when you were successful and gone through winning stuff, and then at what stage does that start turning where you start seeing new bodies are coming in, or Phil Neal would have been replaced when in your era, and then who comes in and it's now. It's now, and you can see what they're doing. He's got the two kids, both from Fulham, who look like
Carvalho,
who look like they're going to be players, but they're a long way off that level yet. So it's a difference between those 2 kids and the old guys. It's like they want 2 players in between there in terms of age, because Milner and Henderson and Thiago are quite well into the 30s, aren't they? And the guy they signed from Italy, I don't even think he's going to play. I'd be very, very surprised. So
they're not happy with him, the Brazilian.
No,
Artemelo,
yeah, but I think it's, in fairness to Klopp, he could have come out and said, "Well, we need this and we need that," but he's never ever done that with the Americans, and we've always found that he's never ever done it. Then all of a sudden, a new transfer window, they'll sign someone, and you go, "Wow!"
Well, Jota was a great signing in that regard.
He was. And the goalkeeper and Van Dijk, and they waited,
But they do need to replenish. You look at City, now. Obviously, they've got an amazing player, but they look fresher. They look different.
But they move people on as well. Sterling moves on, Sterling has moved on. Gabriel Jesus has moved on.
It looks like Klopp is maybe a little bit over loyal at times, but the Racing Post did a feature on Liverpool yesterday, which I thought was a great read. It was Simon Giles, and what was striking was their pressing stats have dropped from 141 pressures per game to 121. Like that's their series figures, and something that really struck me as well. Key contributors Henderson, Mohamed Salah, Virgil van Dijk, and Luis Diaz all made 60 or more appearances for club and country in 21-22. This is insane. You can't expect them to keep playing that.
He played
level.
in every game last year that they were able to play in. We touched on that during the week. They've gone to every final. They've gone to the last game of the league with something still on it, and then they have the short break with the World Cup coming up, and you can't keep hitting them levels with the way they play. City are different in that they dominate the ball. They're 70% possession nearly every week, even against the top teams.
Liverpool have conceded the first goal in 9 of their last 11 league matches, which is interesting. It just points to what Damien Delaney has also said in the show, that they might be a bit overcooked. In terms of Arsenal, Laro, I'm looking at this, 7 successive Premier League home games they've won 9 out of 10. I do think this is a different Arsenal. There's a lot of cynicism about them, but they have got a beautiful fluidity to them. It seems like they're moving on from the Wenger era now.
Yeah, well, as I said about the 3 components with Liverpool, they've definitely got them, Arsenal. They've suddenly looked much stronger at the back, organised, not giving goals away. Goalkeeper's good as well, and in midfield, they've got some outstanding players, and they've just got outstanding players everywhere. They're in that frame of mind and form at the moment where you feel like you could play every day and beat anybody every day. So, the only setback they've had was at Old Trafford, where I just thought that the manager, Arteta, made a mistake at 2-1 down by changing it too early, which obviously helped Man United get a 3rd goal. But this, again, will be the big test for them. But no, they look a really, really good side. And he's had quite a lot of stick, Arteta. But for me, the best move of the lot was getting rid of Aubameyang.
Yeah.
It was a brave call, and they weren't playing particularly well at the time, and I'm sure he was under pressure from all kinds of different people, but he'd been in dressing rooms all his life, and he suddenly thought, bad egg. get him out. And, and I think since he's gone as well, all the youngsters have blossomed. Martinelli versus Trent tomorrow will be a show on its own, I would think.
And Jesus is an upgrade as well.
Yeah, and if Arsenal beat Liverpool tomorrow, they're marginal favourites, and I think they should be stronger favourites, really. If Arsenal beat Liverpool, they're playing Leeds next, and Liverpool are playing Man City, which they will 100% lose the way they're playing at the moment. Yeah. Arsenal will be 17 points ahead of Liverpool, and Liverpool haven't played 10 games yet.
No.
That is absolutely mad, and that could happen.
Yeah. Anyway, the good news is Preston have equalised.
In fairness, Liverpool have a good record against Arsenal last year, and it was Jota that caused all the trouble. He's the one that scored a lot of
It's
goals.
a fascinating game because, and a lot of, I think the Arsenal seem to have gotten a bit of atmosphere back in the ground as well. It just seems that there is something happening there.
It's jumping. The other thing about the two games last year was that, if you remember, in the game at Anfield, it was 0-0. And Arteta lost the plot.
Yeah.
And Arteta came over to Klopp with his head-to-head, and they were balling each other. You know what happened? It woke the cop up.
Yeah, it did.
Yeah.
The cop. It woke the cop up, and all of a sudden, like, wow! And from that moment onward, and then Liverpool scored. It was game over.
He looks more controlled figure though. Arteta, I would say he looks more composed.
I mean, David Moyes, because he had him at Everton, didn't he?
Yeah.
And he always said that, he was a great thinker about the way, players just come off and you've won 4-0 and it's fantastic and all that. And he said people like Arteta would come and they'd chat to you and they'd say, obviously good win and all that. But he would actually talk about the game and the way that it was and tactically the way that the team played. So a lot of people will tell you he was destined to become a manager at some stage.
Newcastle scored against Brentford 1-0, and that has come from Bruno Guimaraes, the Brazilian, at St James's Park. 2-0 now, it's flashing up on my screen against Brentford.
That was my banker during the week.
It was, it was on our new podcast, Mark Your Card, which you can get on Off the Ball Daily on our podcast feed.
Good plug.
You got to do it. Bournemouth 0, Leicester 1. Leicester were my tips, by the way. Chelsea 0, Wolves 0. Man City 1, Southampton 0. João Cancelo with the goal. Spurs away to Brighton from 5:30. In the Championship, Birmingham 1, Bristol City 0. Blackburn 1, Rotherham 0. Blackpool 1, Watford 0. Millwall 1, Middlesbrough 0. Norwich 1, Preston 1, as Laura was saying. Stoke 1, Sheffield United 1. Swansea 1, Sunderland 0. And Wigan 0. Cardiff 1. The goals from there. Celtic 1 in injury time. Away to St Johnstone today in the Scottish Premiership 2-1. Rangers 1, St Mirren 0 at Adist. Livingston 0, Ross County 0. Hibernian 0, Motherwell 0. 53106 your text, folks, on Football Saturday with Laro, Graham Gartland and Johnny Ward. Dan McDonnell coming up after 5 from Frankfurt. We're back after this. Off the Ball Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday. Remember, football and off the ball brought to you by Sky. Watch Premier League, Women's Super League, EFL, Scottish Premiership and much more live on Sky Sports. You can text us 53106. Tweet us at Off the Ball. Listen on News Talk across the country. Also watch us on the digital channels on YouTube, Facebook, on Twitter. All for Off the Ball. We're joined in studio by the League of Ireland, and you had an issue with me calling you an FAI Cup winner, Graham Gartland.
It was more the singularity of it was what caught me out.
So do you want to go through your roll of honour?
Singularity.
Yeah, that was good.
It's great tune by John Hopkins. But you were very. I mean, you brought it up throughout the break. You weren't happy. You weren't having it.
Broadcaster and journalist. You're like, what are you talking about? Freelance over there. Giving what else?
Sorry, what else did you win? Show us your medals.
You won a league. What was it? Drogheda you won the league?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 05, was it?
You have a computer in front of you, just try that.
But it's not on the computer in front of you.
It is.
It isn't.
Google it then. You don't need me to tell you because it just looks like a humble brag.
Graham was a good player.
I'm the king of the humble brag.
Yeah.
Graham was a good player and he won the lot.
Oh, you changed the thing. Thanks very much. Cheers, Shane.
Ex-LOI star Graham Gartland. Now that's the way you're going to be introduced from now on.
Exactly.
It'll be ex-OTB star by the end of today.
No, we're forgiving bunch here. Laura was also on the line, the Liverpool and Republic of Ireland legend.
Yeah, what did he win as well?
Laura won a European Cup, 5 league titles.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I wasn't bringing her up.
And a few Milk Cups and the FA Cup.
Another thing I was saying during the break, Judy, is he's just like reeling off the names of Bobby Charlton and Nobby Stiles as if we were on about his first cousin, and it's like, yeah, Laura was actually been around some pretty interesting people in the game.
Actually, just interested because the documentary's coming out about Ronaldo, Il Fenomeno, the original Ronaldo. Laura, you would have seen him at the World Cup in Japan and everything.
Yeah. Well, he was the best player in the world, wasn't he, for a while? But you know the thing about him, it looked so easily, and every time you looked at him as well in the match, he was just laughing. And you think, how on earth can you have so much talent and be such a bloke who's just kind of, this is it, it's okay, it's just
Haaland's
football.
a bit similar.
Who?
Haaland's a bit similar. He's just like, oh yeah.
There was a brilliant article in The Guardian about his first season in Inter Milan and the stats he put up and the performance he's put in, and one of them was obviously away in the Champions League in Moscow on the pitch that was like a potato field. But he's saying his stats in that season, but it was more that who he was playing against. So all the defences that he was up against, but he still managed to score a ridiculous amount of goals just before the 98 World Cup. About how actually good his season was at Inter Milan, as one of the standout seasons for any player because of obviously the quality of the league. Everybody thinks his Barcelona year in 96 was phenomenal, but his 97 season is unbelievable. I think it was him and Del Piero were going at it because Del Piero was with Juventus, and he come out and says, I was constantly looking to see what Ronaldo was doing because he just upped it, and everybody came to watch him, and it uplifted the whole of Serie A, just how good he was.
A 2-0 to Manchester City against Southampton. Goals from João Cancelo and Phil Foden. Chelsea 0, Wolves 0, Bournemouth 0, Leicester 1 in the Premier League. Patson Daka. Newcastle 2, Brentford 0 now. Bruno Guimaraes and Jacob Murphy. Speaking of Ronaldo's, Laro, the beautiful segue to Manchester United's Cristiano Ronaldo. Was Roy Keane right the other day? Is it unfair that he was left on the bench against City? Is he getting a raw deal now from Ten Hag?
Yeah, I think he is, because he couldn't have done as bad as all the others, and also is the only one in the team at the moment who looks like he's going to score a goal. So as we know, scoring goals wins your game. So he is a little bit.
They got 3 against Man City.
Is what?
They got 3 against Man City.
Yeah, but I mean, they packed in Man City, haven't they? They've given up by then. So I think it underlines what a job obviously it's going to be at Manchester United, as everybody knows. But you know, the thing about Ronaldo, even if he's not scoring, he will entertain defenders. So from that point of view, you'd have him anyway. You might just, it might be the last 25 minutes in a game, and on he goes, and he's fresh, and one thing and another. But yeah, why wouldn't you use him? I don't get that.
Is it maybe because he only walks around and he's not suitable to the style of play of Ten Hag? And maybe
who is suitable to the style of play at Ten Hag at the moment?
Maybe Rashford, Martial, perhaps.
They're not really a pressing team anymore. They've become a bit of a counter-attacking team as well, and the counter-attacking team is off the side. So if he is going to drop in and connect the game, then he's going to have pace on the outside of him. So they're not really pressing from the front the way Liverpool or we said Liverpool used to do, or the way Man City are. They become a little bit of a, like what they done with Arsenal, was catch them on the counter-attack and waiting for opportunities to exploit. So he could be that central one that comes in, drops, links the game, they get into wide areas, and he still has the pace to make the box then, especially for cutbacks.
Also, he has the cleverness to get in front of people anyway from the sides, definitely.
Yeah, he's also, though, you got to remember, he's also pretty much a year older than what we were talking about last season. I don't know. I thought a lot of the stuff Roy Keane said, JD, was pretty questionable in terms of what.
But it had the desired effect, though, didn't it?
Yeah, well, it was a bit of like.
Do you not feel he should be treated better by Man United?
The Man City thing was, I mean, why? Like, you don't need to bring him on. The game is done. Like, should you not be like using him as sparingly as you can? And he's a problem for Ten Hag. I think Ten Hag has done well this season. They were out of their depth maybe last Sunday, but they've had a good season. They're doing better maybe than looked likely after the first few games, and he's dealt with the Maguire-Ronaldo situation quite well. The thing with Keane, JD, was it seemed like Roy Keane was implying that there was all these sort of options for Ronaldo in the off-season. I don't think there were. I think he's hard to get rid of at the moment.
Yeah, you're there for another season, isn't he?
I don't think there are any options. I think because anything that he would add an interest in, I think he would have gone. Surely,
it's his wages, though, isn't it? Who can pay him? He's one of the highest.
You just hope the dressing room is all right, from a United perspective. So they're going to Everton tomorrow. Like Frank Lampard, 7 o'clock kickoff. Strangely enough, like the best defensive record in the league. I think I'd never hear myself saying that about Everton and Frank Lampard.
But his two centre backs are really good players,
Cody and Tarkowski, yeah.
And they basically pinched the two of them. So they've done great from that point of view. And they've got a very, very good goalkeeper. I know he can be a bit of a tool at times, but he's a very, very good goalkeeper. So
in terms of his mistakes, obviously.
Yeah. It's really got something to build on, haven't they? Because they're difficult to score against. So if you can get the rest of the things sorted, and if Calvert-Lewin ever decides that to play football rather than lie on the treatment table, then they're going to go up the league.
Yeah, he's got
lost 2 games from 8. It's like when people were writing his obituary.
But it's interesting that like the Lampard Gerrard kind of they're almost in the same boat, aren't they, in terms of the discourse and the narrative, and Lampard's beginning to stabilise, and Gerrard, there are definitely questions to be answered.
They're two totally different characters, for all that.
Yeah, we spoke about it before on here about. I remember doing one of the shows, and you were asking me about why I thought Gerrard was going to be successful, and he brought all his staff with him from Rangers. But I think the big one that he's lost is Michael Beale, and because when you hear of everything that's gone on, that he would have been on them tactically. He has a group chat with the players that he would have been sending videos to them, watched them. A lot of that has died down since he's left. And I think what Lampard has done is Lampard reinvented his coaching staff than what he had at Chelsea. Jody Morris didn't come with him. I think he brought Ashley Cole in. He's brought other staff in with him, and he's gone and said, right, well, we can't play as open as we did at Chelsea. We're going to be a lot more solid and a lot more pragmatic. I agree with Laura. We touched on it as well. The two centre backs are really good organisers. Conor Cody especially, really good organiser, gets people in around. They don't give up soft silly goals the way they used to last season, and they're building off the platform of we're going to be difficult to beat, and then if we get a chance, and that breeds confidence that, again, all you need is one chance to win a game if you're keeping that amount of clean sheets.
Do you know the other thing, and I might be overstating this a bit, but I think one thing Lampard has on his side is that Goodison is a cauldron. Like, it's
at certain times.
At certain times, but like if they get behind them, like a lot of the Premier League grounds are, particularly the good teams, there are a lot of day trippers, and there's like the Etihad today, there's probably not much of an atmosphere there. You see a lot of people on their phones. Goodison, they're hardcore fans, and it's a hard place to play for opposition, and they are rowing in behind them, and I'm quite surprised, but they are climbing up the table, and tomorrow will be a good test for Man United.
Why is that game at 7 o'clock?
Europe, is it?
I need to check.
To do with Man United in Europe and their travel, I think.
This game as well, JD. We're sorry, Laura. We're 2 minutes before half time here. Southampton haven't had a shot on goal. Not only not on target, they haven't had a shot on goal yet.
You'd worry for Southampton. I think they could be in trouble. As are Wolves. I think those two clubs are in trouble. Like Hasenhüttl, every single week you seem to read issues that there's just beautiful
Here's
turn
Haaland.
by Haaland. Beautiful turn.
He's actually not had a great game so far. He's only had like a 9.8 out. He actually hasn't had a great game today. It'll be interesting. He'll probably get a hat trick yet.
It's like was it the ice skating? You're going to give it 9.5, 9.6.
Sell him on.
Sell him, yeah.
What will you get for him now?
200 million.
Well, who's got 200 million?
Plenty of people, unfortunately, you shouldn't. So we have tomorrow Everton Man United. How do you see it, Laro?
For some reason, I fancy Man United, and I don't really know why, John. Okay. But I just think it won't be a great game. But I just think they might just nick it.
I think Rashford has got his confidence back, it seems.
Totally.
Yeah, and like you said, is that probably not overthinking when he's in on goal? He's looking up and he's finishing, and he's the fact he's willing to run beyond people again, which is what when he came through, that was what sort of set him alight, was when there was spacing behind. He was willing to run into it, and he's running into it with a more aggression and enthusiasm than he probably has done the last couple of years. I think a lot of footballers forget what they're actually good at sometimes and want to come and play and link the game, but his attribute is the fact that he's paced the born and behind, and you have to exploit that while you have it, and that will give you space in front to play then, because if you do threaten the running behind and the back four drops, the space where you can come inside then and play off your right foot in front of a back four. So
there's a shot, and all these attacking players from Man United are playing better without Ronaldo. That's the point. Like Ronaldo, Rashford was a mess last season, and
I struggle with Bruno Fernandes as well, Johnny. Like,
his behaviour Sunday was like
the same team as him. He's an arm waver. Someone gives the ball away, he waves the arm. You're like
captain.
You're not allowed to tackle him, are you?
Yeah, but even like you're making your other players feel. You're meant to be inspire them and get them going. You're not meant to ridicule them to the point where, look where I have to play with. It frustrates me watching them sometimes. It'd be like, just get on with your own game as well,
I think one of the most interesting developments this week, which I've been waiting to ask you about, JD, was Matt Doherty and Conte, and this out of the blue, I don't know what you call it, an outburst, but like it looks like their relationship is toast.
Yeah, and like the guy in the position, and he played in Frankfurt where I was, we'll talk about later in the show, is Emerson. And I think he's an absolute liability. And I said in the programme last week, he got sent off against Arsenal.
But is this a concern for Stephen Kenny? Because
he is good going forward, Emerson, but he doesn't have a final product. They don't trust Jed Spence at Spurs. Conte, I don't think he even wanted to sign him. So he's like, well, I'm not picking this guy.
But what's the implication here? What's happened to Doherty? Because like Doherty wasn't great in the international window, for example, but everyone was talking about, oh, he looks amazingly fit, yada yada. And then
Lauro and Graham would know more, but surely match sharpness is the key thing in football. And
there's more to it than that, though. Like what he said during the week was.
I think it could be a situation where in January that he has to go because like Emerson is terrible. And that's almost a fan's view. But then Doherty, who had such a good run in the team towards the end of last season, should be in the team. Like he looks very fit. And how are you going to get better without, like, you got to play matches? They got about 9 matches in October, so I don't understand why he's in the team. And what the default mechanism then is to play Sessegnon on the left and Perisic on the right. So I'd be a bit worried if I was Matt Doherty at Spurs.
Stephen Kenny's obviously thinking, well, the next press conference I do, I'm 100% going to be asked about this. I suppose
the good thing for Stephen Kenny is not to worry about anything until March.
Yeah.
And by that time, if Matt Doherty's
probably be gone.
If he's not playing for Tottenham, he'll be gone and hopefully playing first team football at the club. Because Seamus Coleman at right wing back.
Oh yeah, I don't agree with him. I don't agree with Conte obviously criticising these players. I probably wouldn't have agreed with Doherty in coming out and criticise Martin O'Neill and Roy Keane the way he did neither. I think there's certain things that need to be kept in house, and he's been on the end of probably a manager coming out and criticising him in the press, but he's done the same to a previous regime as well. So they're the things that shouldn't happen, in my opinion. I think if you're unhappy with something, and you go and speak to your manager about it. Same if the manager's unhappy with you, he speaks to you about it. But that would be my opinion on it. That he's done it to a manager as well, so he knows how it feels.
All is not well though at Spurs. It's all not clicking. Even though they're third in the table, even from the other night, there's just something not right. And even Stephen Hunt was saying on the football kickoff, maybe Richarlison has destabilised the balance of the front players. There's almost too many of them, and they need Kulusevski in the team to create a link between defence and attack. So
I think we miss him, Joe, Kulusevski, because he's a player, isn't he?
Yeah, and I just don't know.
Out with his hamstring.
He's out with the hams. He's not going to play against Brighton. I'm just a bit worried about that. Like Højbjerg and Bentancur, good players, more defensive players, but I don't think they've got that. I'd love to see Spurs have a James Maddison in the team, but then you probably have a tops heavy abundance of riches at the top. And defensively, I don't know, but Larry's at times can be a little bit suspect, you know.
They seem to lack control in games, JD. Like, I know the way they play, but...
Yeah, I wouldn't think they should with Bentancur.
Against Frankfurt, they got control in the second half, but they have not had the fluency, as it were, as a team that they had towards the end of last season. I was actually going through, I think the Athletic had a league or something like that, for exactly the last year, and it was City, Liverpool, Arsenal, Spurs, but Chelsea and Newcastle were kind of quite close to them. If it keeps going that way, you can kind of see the plate shifting in the next 18 months, that Chelsea, given the fact that they've unlimited money again, as long as there's not too much interference from the top, and Newcastle might start to get into those top 4 positions.
Totally.
Obviously Chelsea should default be in the top 4, but
Liverpool are in a battle for the top 4 now.
Tell you what, he's had some image change, hasn't he, Graham Potter?
Yeah.
Looked like a Bond villain the other day for Chelsea.
It was one of those more milk tray man.
Yeah, it was. He looked great. I was like, what happened here? Where did he go from?
Guys, I've got a question for you. How much do you think Brighton got for him?
I'd say about 2.5 million.
less than Mark Cucurella's transfer. Let's put it that way.
Anyone else?
No guess from me.
Must be. Is it higher, Laurel?
22.
Compensation.
22?
Yeah.
Well, but they got the whole staff, Laura. That's for the whole team, is it?
Even so, 22 million.
That's where he got the turtleneck from.
Did I say 22 million?
The only reason I know is because I was at the Brighton game and I spoke to one of the directors who I've known there for years, and they actually volunteered to me. I said, "You've done great, the manager," and they went, "Yeah, 22 million." I think it might have been 22 and a half. I've just heard 22.
No, this is the compensation. Obviously, he would have had a long contract to Brighton. So,
but he did take. He took 5 or 6 of the staff went, didn't he? Billy Reid, they took the goal. He took everybody. How do you think he's going to do, Laro? Potter.
Good question. I know from people at Brighton that he was very, very good, and people like Lorna will tell you that he was as good as anybody as a coach, and he's had Klopp, other people like that. Just a bit different, Chelsea, isn't it? And I don't know how patient this new guy will be. He seems to be changing absolutely everybody, medical staff, the whole kind of thing. I think it's just one of them. If you go through a spell where you lose 3 or 4 games out of 5 or 6, anyone can get the bullet now, can't they? Anybody.
Scored just before half-time, Chelsea, as we speak. So the goal coming from Kai Havertz. Doesn't score enough, but he's a quality player. Chelsea 1, Wolves 0 at half-time. Also half-time in the Premier League, Bournemouth 0, Leicester 1, and Man City 2, Southampton 0, and Newcastle 2, Brentford 0. And in the Championship, Birmingham 2, Bristol City 0 is a half-time. Blackburn 1, Rotherham 0. It's Blackpool 1, Watford 1. Coventry 0, Burnley 1. Millwall 1, Middlesbrough 0. Norwich 1, Preston 1. Stoke 2, Sheffield United 1. Swansea 2, Sunderland 0. West Brom 0, Luton 0. And Wigan 0, Cardiff 1. And in Scotland, Celtic 1 earlier on, 2-1 in injury time against St Johnstone. Hibernian 0, Motherwell 0 is a half-time score, as is Rangers 2, St Mirren 0, and Livingston 0, Ross County 0. 6 o'clock start for Dundee United Aberdeen. We're speaking about Spurs. They kick off against Brighton at 5:30. Laura, before we let you go, Arsenal Liverpool tomorrow, what's your feeling and why?
I'll take a point now from Liverpool's point of view. I think it's going to be a really tough game for them, and I don't see yet them posing too many problems for Arsenal, but I think they're going to have to sit tight a little bit in this game.
What about Nunez? What have you made of him so far?
He was good. I think, you know what, he's one of those, John. I think he's a player, you just got to leave him on his own up front. He's that kind of player, and he tried too hard, to be honest with you. He could have had a hat-trick against Rangers, but he tried too hard. But his movement was really good, and he linked up really, really well. But he needs a goal. He just needs a goal like anybody, because you're a striker. But I think he's going to be a good player. I don't think there's any problem about that. Yeah. But I just think he's one of those through the middle. Let him go and play and let him do his own thing. And I think once he starts scoring, he won't stop.
His comments about the language barrier with Klopp were quite interesting.
That was interesting. Yeah, I read that during the week.
I didn't see that. What was it?
They just don't talk, really.
There just seems to be a bit of a disconnect from what the reports that the language barrier between him and Klopp, he's still learning. They're learning his way.
He's still reeling from the send-off against Palace as well, I think, in terms of getting the fans, on side and...
he needs a goal in a big game. He needs to score the winner tomorrow or something like that.
He needs a goal tomorrow. But Pepe Linders, he speaks good Spanish, doesn't he? So
you had to change the way they played, though, Lauro, because Liverpool always played with a 9 that dropped in. Like Bobby Firmino was the one that dropped in, and he was the one that actually dropped in and helped them press, as he would sit on the deepest midfielder as well. And Nunez is, like you said, he wants space down the side of centre-backs. He wants to get crosses in. And the space down the side of centre-backs was normally the space that Salah and Mane would run into. So Liverpool are adapting to that change, is that if the wingers are going to come short and inside, they want the full-back. But then where's the space for Nunez to run then? Like you said, he wants to stay in the box and in front of the goal. But he's not going to drop in and link the game as well as maybe Firmino did as well.
I think he might be a better player away from home, to be honest with you.
Because he was good against Liverpool in Benfica in the games they played.
We took him off the back of both games.
Yeah.
We tortured him.
Yeah.
Canate at home at Anfield, he didn't know if it was New York or New Year. He had him all over the place. And but then, in fairness to Nunez, he was dropping short, turning, going in behind and everything. He looked a fabulous player.
Lauro, thanks so much. Enjoy tomorrow.
Will do.
Mark Lawrenson there, and between 4 and 5, Graham Gartland and Johnny Ward are staying with us, and we'll also speak to Dan McDonnell of the Irish Independent, who's in Frankfurt ahead of the European Championship draw tomorrow. Who are the Republic of Ireland going to get? Plenty to discuss, plenty in the League of Ireland, plenty on away days as well between 4 and 5. Speak then.
News Talk.
And you're welcome back to Football Saturday here on News Talk. John Duggan with you 3 to 5 this evening. This is Football Saturday. Remember, football and off the ball brought to you by Sky. Get all the football you love in one place across Sky Sports, BT Sport and Premier Sports. You can listen across the country on News Talk. Watch us on the digital and social channels for YouTube, for Facebook, for Twitter as well, and wherever. You can also check out the OTB Sports app. We're joined in studio by the former League of Ireland and FAI Cups winner Graham Gartland, and the broadcaster and journalist Johnny Ward. Also, we'll be joined shortly on the line from Frankfurt by the Irish Independent's football correspondent Dan McDonnell, ahead of the draw for European Championship 2024, which takes place tomorrow morning, and the Republic of Ireland are in the hat. We have goals going into the Premier League. The match is beginning to start in the second half. Bournemouth 0, Leicester 1. Patson Daka on the mark for the Foxes. Chelsea 1, Wolves 0, Kai Havertz. Man City 2, Southampton 0, João Cancelo and Phil Foden. No Haaland goal yet. Newcastle 2, Brentford 0. We have Bruno Guimaraes and Jacob Murphy. In the Championship, we also have goals going in there. Wigan 0, Cardiff 1. West Brom 0, Luton 0 as a half-time. Swansea 2, Sunderland 0. It is Stoke 2, Sheffield United 1. Norwich 1, Preston 1. Millwall 1, Middlesbrough 0. It is Coventry 0, Burnley 1. It is Blackpool 1, Watford 1. Blackburn Rovers 1, Rotherham 0. Birmingham City 2, Bristol City 0. In Scotland, Celtic beat St Johnstone 2-1 earlier. Rangers lead St Mirren 2-0. It is Hibs 0, Motherwell 0. And Livingston 0, Ross County 0. Johnny, I don't think you were impressed by Shamrock Rovers' performance in Norway during the week.
God, I was hoping this would be later on in the show.
Just want to maybe get some reaction from the listeners if you have a strong view on it.
Everything that Shamrock Rovers stand for in terms of their progression in the game,
can you hear me?
They play football. Graham is involved in their under-14s. Probably
1, 2, 3, 4, 5.
one of the best underage teams at that level to ever play in Ireland.
1,
you would
2,
say
3,
under
4,
14.
5.
I wouldn't say they ever play in Ireland, but because
The levels you're at now, like.
some of them are fantastic.
So anyway,
Okay, yeah,
and
it's on
I've been waiting to see the Shamrock Rovers team go into Europe, into group stages, into a group that I think gave them a chance to pick up points.
40,
They got a point against Duggan in their first game, and I had to think back, watching League of Ireland teams in Europe, JD, is genuinely one of my favourite sporting occasions. Like I love watching League of Ireland teams pit their talents against superior teams in Europe. And what Stephen Kenny did in 2016, I think, pretty much got him the Ireland job. To see Dundalk go toe-to-toe with teams that were better than them and lost no game in that group in 2016 by more than a goal. Were competitive in every game and banged there in terms of potential qualification right into the last game in Israel. Subsequently, Dundalk got into the group stages in a sort of a forgettable, to an extent, behind closed doors group stages, because it wasn't the same Dundalk. There were problems off the pitch. In 6 games, they managed to score 8 goals, even though they were a bit of a mess at the time. Jordan Flores got an amazing goal against Arsenal. He got another amazing goal against Molde, who were obviously Shamrock Rovers' opposition. And as much as Dundalk were a mess, they put up a fight. And to see the Shamrock Rovers' performance on Thursday night was utterly depressing for me, to see a team of that talent.
Is that not because they need to win the league and they're just a bit looking over their shoulder? Derry now.
So you absolutely. So you can say Stephen Bradley and his coaching staff. And I was watching his body language in the Shelbourne game, because they play Shelbourne tomorrow, which unfortunately clashes with the Liverpool-Arsenal game. So I would definitely implore people to watch this. I think it'll be fascinating. Damien Duff is going to have a say in the title race. I saw them against Shelbourne in Tolka recently, and I couldn't get over how bad Shamrock Rovers were. It was as bad as I've seen them in years. They were so off it, and they looked tired. And I think Stephen Bradley and his coaching staff basically took the view that they can't compete on the 2 fronts that are left. They can't do it. So he almost, without conceding the tie on Thursday, he rested key players.
He prioritised winning the title, is possibly the argument you're trying to make.
He prioritised winning the title, and if you view that in the pragmatic sense of, what is the chance of Shamrock Rovers getting out of this group with 1 point from 2 games, having been battered by Ghent in week 2? Probably not that high. But I just can't, for the life of me, think that Stephen Kenny in that Dundalk team, or almost any manager now, would accept that you would produce a performance like that on Thursday. And playing Emako up front was obviously a gamble, because his hold-up ability for me hasn't been there. So you lost Gaffney, but they didn't have Jack Byrne, they didn't have Graham Burke. But this goes to the level of, and I spoke to journalists who would have been on that trip, and you have to sell the idea of going to away games now. The press isn't what it was, and papers are trying to cut down on money. You can't guarantee that journalists will even be allowed to go to these games anymore if you're going to go to a game that was dead after 20 minutes. And it was horrible to watch. As a League of Ireland fan, I love seeing Shamrock Rovers go toe-to-toe against Djurgårdens, play some nice football. that performance on Thursday, in terms of like the Molde manager before the game was talking up Shamrock Rovers. Irish football was a bit of a laughing stock on Thursday night with that performance, I thought, and I was very, very disappointed. And I can see why Shamrock Rovers are prioritising the league. They have a big battle on their hands. I think at the moment Derry City might even be a better team than them toe to toe. But I really was. It was demoralising to watch that on Thursday.
Riyad Mahrez' score for Manchester City against Southampton 3-0 now early in the second half. Dan McDonnell, the Irish Independent, is in Frankfurt. Dan, how are you?
Hi lads, how are things?
Good. So you were in Molde, Dan. I don't know if you heard what Johnny said there.
Yeah, no, I did, and I sort of look, like you have to sort of strip the emotion from the debate to some degree, you know, in the sense that, like, I heard Adrian and I think Shane maybe talking about yesterday, and you know, would they not go for the, you know, the financial incentives that come with potentially getting a result? But the problem is, the bigger financial equation for Rovers is, you know, their business plan is about getting into Europe every year, getting into the group stages, of Europe every year, which is sort of worth 3 million quid. In fact, they've got upwards of 4 million this year. And the only way they can get that money is through winning the league, realistically. So the 166 grand for a draw versus potentially 3-4 million next year, you know, that's the equation that we're talking about here. But it is a little bit deflating, you know, as someone who went over to the game, and you sort of build it up. And as much as you understand the decision, you look at the team sheet before the game and you're just like, oh, what's happening here? This can't be it. And I understand the reasons, and I completely get the reasons. And I think you have to walk a mile in someone's shoes. You know, if Shamrock Rovers performed well in their European group stage games, but didn't win, and they might never have beaten Molde away or got a draw against Molde away, it could be the toughest game in the group. But then they go on, like they give it a go on Thursday, lose bravely 2-1 and lose the league. The season's probably remembered as a failure, you know, or you know, whatever, like in that sort of context, you know, come January. So I get it, but there is a little bit of, you're selling these games. You say, you know, when Shamrock Rovers qualify for the group stages, you say, this is the dream. You know, you hear players saying, we've always wanted to play group stage football. And then you're watching a group stage match that's just a complete non-event. Like it was like, you know, I would have been talking to, say, the Molde journalists over there, and the thing about group stages is there's sort of a certain respect for a team that's got this far, and it's a sense of, well, you know, what are you expecting from the Irish team? And you're talking about some of the better players, and you know, maybe they'll be competitive in this match, and then after 10-15 minutes in the stadium, particularly in the stadium, you could almost feel this vibe of, well, this is going to be absolutely fine here. You know, this is going to be absolutely fine. And there was that sort of mild sense of embarrassment over how routine it was. Now, Molde officials understand, you know, you understand that you want to try and win your domestic league first and foremost. But, like, I've had a bit of a bugbear. Like, I hate the fact that these Shamrock Rovers games clash with these Manchester United ones, you know, and you're always saying,
why?
Irish club. And there's an Irish club in group stage competition, and you're saying this should be like front and center, like this should be in the, you know, to the foremost in the news agenda. Like, and you know, these Europa League games don't matter much to Manchester United in the greater scheme of things. And then, like, you might turn on the radio or newspapers or wherever, and the United game is getting greater coverage.
Is that not just because they got more fans, though?
No, I know that, John, but like, this is like, we still live in Ireland, you know, and this is the whole point I would make, is that, you know, I completely understand that argument. I'm coming back to disagree with myself here to some degree.
It's all right.
Like, I would make the point that, you know, I understand that argument in the context of, if we're talking about a League of Ireland game, you know, between two League of Ireland clubs, but when you have an Irish team like your champions representing, you know, your country technically in this at the same level of competition, you know, I know the Conference League is then from the Europa League. There is an element of, you know, you could, you know, if you had an Irish tennis player going well in a major, but like more people preferred, you know, to watch Federer or Nadal or whatever, you'd still be saying, no, you have to support this Irish player. But yet, if that Irish person was in there and they actually were saying this isn't that important to us, it's slightly harder to get on your high horse about it, if you know what I mean. If it's a distraction to them, then how can you look to distract everyone else with this story?
I get it now. I guess that's what you're saying.
That's basically my problem. And like Dundalk in 2016, you remember, John, like, you know, Stephen Kenny was the sports manager of the year. Like, their games were actually head to head with Manchester United games at the time, but there was a huge buzz around the Dundalk games, or a huge discussion around the Dundalk games, because they were competitive. They were a part of the group, and you could see that for their players, like, it meant everything. It meant the world. Yet, like, Shamrock Rovers have taken a business decision from their perspective that if they can get into the Conference League again and again and again, then eventually they'll have the money in the bank, they'll have the funds to be more competitive, to be able to compete. So it's a little bit of a project. It's a step in the road, and there's an element of grinning and bearing it. But it was hard to grin and bear it on Thursday. That's what I would say.
Okay, Graham, you've got the Shamrock Rovers hat on here.
Yeah, but it's not Bradley's prerogative to look after anything else than Shamrock Rovers, and again, that's the project, and he has to stick to the plan of the project. And like you said, I think Dan had an article about it being pragmatic over romantic, and that's what it has to be sometimes, and that's the unfortunate side of football sometimes, that you can't go out all out and make sure that you prioritise one thing over the other, where the league is the most important thing for Shamrock Rovers at this point in time.
Is this because, though, there's a gap between the Champions League qualification and then there's no Europa League middle? Is that right, Dan?
Well, no, there is. Like, they went into the Europa League after losing to...
The Champions route is massive, JD. Absolutely.
But for the second team doesn't get into the Europa League, and that's the gap, and that's why Rovers have to get with this league win.
Yeah, and Dan made this point with me when and I'm sorry to interject, I know you're talking, Graham, and I'll be very brief here, but when Rovers played Derry on the back of, was it the Ghent game?
Yeah.
They went to Derry, they were so poor on the Sunday, and Dan I was arguing about the fact that Derry were overwhelming favourites to win that game because there's a lot of respect for Derry, but Dan came back to me and said this is entirely to do with the fact that they played on Thursday night. I think they were bruised from that, and they're like, we can put up a performance like we did in Derry, because if we draw that game tomorrow, Derry kind of have the league almost in their hands, and Shelbourne are playing very well. It's definitely a potential banana skin, but where's your pride? I mean, where's the pride in the prom? Thursday night was just, I don't know how that benefits any of the 11 players who played, because it was so demoralising.
But again...
But what about the opposition?
They were good.
Right, take it back, right? So you strip it right back here and let's understand a few things with it. The Your Gardens game. Nobody said, oh, well, Stephen Bradley changed his team. He played Idemo in that game and he played Ferizaj in that game. As well. Everybody said it's great that he put the young players in. Ferizaj was brilliant in the game.
I don't think Idemo started.
Oh, sorry, I'm not sure.
Idemo didn't start. No, Ferizaj, no issue.
And everybody said he was excellent, and the story became about him playing. It was a 0-0 draw. With a half an hour to go, he empties the bench and puts on Gaffney. I think Jack Bourne comes on in midfield. Okay, then what happens is it's a really exciting game. He tried to do that again at the weekend, and if you listen to his comments after the game, what Stephen Bradley said was the goal just after half-time kills it because it changes what he was trying to do. So he's obviously trying to be pragmatic and be a bit more defensive. So after they lose 3-0 against Ghent away, I think Brian Kerr was doing a Virgin Media with myself, and he was saying that they need to be a bit more pragmatic in how they defend. They need to suffer in games. So Stephen, obviously, he's decided with his staff, I'm not saying off the back of what Brian Kerr said, Stephen Bradley's decided with his staff that we're going to be a bit more pragmatic. He played a 5 with a flat 4 maybe in midfield and stopped the supply from wide areas, which meant he gave up crosses. They probably didn't defend the crosses the way he would have liked, especially in the first 15 minutes, and then they come into the game. But he's hoping to get that to 1-0 with 30 minutes to go, and then that changes when they give away the goals. So he has an idea in his head, but obviously the game's ever evolving. But he can't go on and build in Europe for next season and the year after if they're not in that stage of the European competition.
Yeah.
But it's not his prerogative to go. It's not Stephen Bradley's job to put the pride of Irish football on his back. That's up to, they've won the league 2 years in a row. They're on course to win the league again. That's his prerogative, what he does with his football.
Well, I think Graham, I've so much time for Stephen Bradley, and the way he's spoken about Irish football in terms of teams doing well in Europe. He's an incredibly good backer of the game here, and I would look at the players a bit. I just thought you were better than that. I thought you were better than... This was an absolute hiding. It was shamefully bad to watch from an Irish perspective. And Amaku, I wouldn't have played him up front, but even the players that he played, he still had good players. And it was just like the body language. It was like they were beaten from the get-go. And it was... I was just watching this. It was like I had so high expectations for this group stage, and it looks like an afterthought after 3 games.
I think the back-to-back away games is probably, like you said, going away to Ghent and then going away to and Stevens come out and said this was going to be the toughest game, and the fact
he was probably right,
but also the fact that Molde have lost 3-2 to Your Gardens as well has made the game a little bit more of a must-win for them. So you could see that in how they approach the game. Like I said to you, Rovers went away, and listen, I've been in European teams where you just let other teams have the ball and you try and stay in the game. That's alien to probably Rovers and this particular team, and it was difficult for them because they're used to dominating the ball in the home games, and they'll do to teams what Molde done to them, and that the similar system. Both the wing backs go high, their inside rights and their inside left then go high, the front men pin you back, and they're able to dominate the ball, and that's what Molde done. And like, in fairness, they're up against the top notch team with a budget that's ridiculously high. But again, it's a learning curve for the players, and it's a learning curve for everybody involved, that it has to be built over time, that it makes a big impact. I know
sometimes your expectations are too high.
Correct.
Yeah, sometimes, and it is almost like we were coloured a bit by that Dundalk 2016, and that was such a black kind of swan event.
Like Rovers got to the group stages as well before, and
they did, and they lost every game. They lost every.
Exactly.
But Rovers, the one thing I would say, and I've been slagged a lot about this, saying that I think this is as good a League of Ireland champions as I've seen when Rovers are at their best. In away games in Europe against better opposition, they've gotten hiding after hiding after hiding, and regardless of what you say about what team they picked, they have that mark against them where they just haven't been anywhere near the standard required. And it is a project, but that's where they're at the moment, regardless of what team they played, what tactics, whether they tried to pass the ball out from the back, or whether they basically played a team with Sunday in mind. They've gotten a series of hidings away from home, and that's the reality of it.
Did you
I think,
go on?
So I was one last thing. I think, like, the European football, like, it exposes every flaw you have for an Irish club too. And like, I would make this point, and I've said this, like, I think an Irish club to succeed in Europe, like, people don't realise like how good they have to be. Like, you know, Molde's budget, I think, is like 4 times the budget of Shamrock Rovers. Like, you have to be absolutely 100% at your peak to challenge them. And what's been proven this year, like, is that if you go in a team that isn't your peak team, like, you just can't do it. You know, I understand what they tried to do completely on Thursday. I get it. They tried to hang in there for an hour. Stephen Bradley said it, and then maybe spring the subs. But obviously, there's an inherent gamble in that, and that there's no way at the start of the year, if you sat down with Stephen Bradley and his staff and said, you're playing Molde away tomorrow, you're not going to start Jack Byrne, Dylan Watts, Graham Burke, and Rory Gaffney. They would have said, what? You know, but then real life problems have created that situation. But it's not. They play them this Thursday coming in Molde, in Dublin. They have 2 home games. I'd imagine you'll see a different approach. I hope you do, because like, these are special moments in the lives of the players too. You can't imagine it's going to come every year, and you don't want it to pass you by either, you know. And that's, like, I understand there's a little bit of emotion coming into the talk where, like, you know, the Dundalk gave it everything in 2016, right? Absolutely everything. They were brilliant. Like, they won the league, 120 minutes of the cup final 3 days after being in Russia, like, amazing. But they were completely gone at the game the first couple of months in 2017. It really took it out of them.
Many points did they win the league by? Many points did they win by in 2016?
They did have a title race in 2016, Graham. They had the game against Cork, and it's the last title race I think we've had until maybe this year, you know, where they had the game against Cork quite late in the day where Darrell Horgan scored twice. And it was a bit like this year. You always felt they'd be fine, in the same way you always feel Rovers will be fine, but it wasn't done. Like, they had a smaller squad, and I remember doing games in Longford on a Monday 3 days before they played Zenit on the Thursday at home, and they would have had a strong team out. But as I said, it caught up on that team. They had a lot of bumps and bruises, and it caught up with them in 2017. But I suppose they'll have the memories of 2016 forever. You know, it's a tough one. Like, I appreciate
Rovers go to Sligo, and they're excellent. Like, they're excellent against Sligo in a game that you think they're going to slip up. They go and beat Sligo 3-1 comfortably.
But I think the point is, sorry, Johnny, can I just say, you know, they were excellent last week. The point I was going to make, though, like, I think Rovers next year, they probably know they need better players in areas of their squad as well too. You know, and they lack certain things, I think, in attacking departments in Europe if you're going to counter-attack against teams. You know what I mean? I think the profile of their squad probably needs a refreshing in certain departments, and I'm sure they know that too, and I'm sure that'll probably happen in the off season. Graham can't say too much, but I'm sure there'll be. I'd imagine there's some interesting developments there in the off season.
To be honest with you, I don't discuss anything with Stephen or his staff about anything got to do with the first team. It's none of my business.
The struggle is real in the sense of their league situation, JD. They are in serious danger of not winning the league, because
if they win on Sunday, they're back to 5 points.
If they don't win tomorrow against Shells, and Shells at the moment are playing like a team that, like, they're just loving life, they're scoring goals, and they were
conceding goals as well.
They're conceding goals, but they were well worth their point when they clashed like 2 weeks ago in Tolka, right? They'll go to that game tomorrow. It's live on TV. Damien Duff's in the, it's the Damien Duff thing. They're really playing for him, and they will fancy their chance there. And there's a real chance the Rovers don't win that game tomorrow. And if they don't win that game tomorrow, personally, I would fancy Derry to beat them at the moment, the way Rovers and Derry are playing.
I still have Rovers as favourites to beat Shells tomorrow.
They're strong favourites tomorrow. If they don't win tomorrow,
there's a chance you're going to lose every game you go into, but I still think they're favourites to win the game.
They're totally favourites to win the game, but there's a chance they don't. And if they don't win tomorrow, Derry will fancy their chance. So I can see the pragmatism of it, but it was demoralising to watch.
Well, here's a question for you, right? Do you feel that there's
Haaland scored 4-0 Man City against Southampton, 15 Premier League goals this season.
Just after Bazuna had this amazing moment of robbing him in the box, he's scored a carbon copy of the goal he got in the second half against Man United.
Well, here's a question for you from a player's point of view then going into tomorrow. The players know that Stephen obviously moved, and he in fairness to Stephen, probably first time he said it, he changed the team with the game in mind on Sunday. So the players know that he's changed the team for this to win the game on Sunday. So the players feel that expectation that they have to perform on Sunday. So it's given the players that extra. No, we need to make sure he's made a decision on Thursday to benefit this football club, and it's on us now to perform. I think it's given the players an extra incentive to make sure that you go out and perform against Shells and beat them.
It's a shame, JD. Sorry, it's a shame it clashes with this game because you've Joey O'Brien and Damien Duff, both ex-Rovers, in the dugout. It was fairly feisty when they played in Tolka. Shelburne are playing good football at the moment. This is going to be a cracker. There's so much riding on it, and please watch it, if you can, because I think even watch the end of it if you've watched the Liverpool game.
Well, there are ways now of taping things.
Recording is,
and you can watch things back to back, Johnny.
I can't wait. I can't wait.
Well, given your passion, I think you probably will be checking your phone. But Erling Haaland now 15 goals in the Premier League. You were doing a bit of detective work over there in Ole Gunnar Solskjaer land, Dan, during the week.
Yeah, well, you're over in Molde. I mean, and
when in Molde.
Everything. Yeah, everything. Well, you were in Frankfurt, John, where I am now, of course. I don't know if have we got your travel review yet?
No, waiting for you, Dan. Waiting for you to do your Norwegian travel review. Did you see any fjords, Dan? Did you?
I didn't. No, I saw a Ford. It was the car.
But no,
that's bad. That's really bad.
I was dreadful, but I didn't.
You're not coming back.
Partridge moment.
Yeah, sorry. Can we rewind that, please? How can you everything in football at the moment is about Haaland, really, isn't it? You can't even go through a conversation without him scoring a goal. It doesn't matter what day of the week it is, and you go to Molde and. And I mean this in the nicest way possible, though it doesn't come across that way, but it's a pretty unremarkable, quiet place. It's not a place where, I don't know, you go to a sort of a lower league club in England or something, or you can feel the energy of football everywhere, or, it's I went to the press conference from Molde on Wednesday, and there was only 2 local reporters there, and maybe 1 or 2 camera crews, and you might think, oh no, is that just because it's maybe a low profile game? But they were saying, no, the people from Oslo don't really come to us too often. It's a really, it's a 25,000 population place, with a really top football club. There's 15 points cleared league and a great reputation as an academy not so much an academy, but a place to go to develop as a player, as Haaland did when he's 16. But you're looking at this place and you're imagining Haaland was here for 2.5 years or 2 full years.
Would he be very prominent over there in terms of would they be advertising that a lot? The fact that he was with them, Dan.
Yeah, well, no, the club wouldn't be screaming it from the rooftops, but chatting to the local paper guys, they were just saying the guy in a hotel, he was every tourist wants to ask about Haaland now, and he's the biggest superstar in Norway, bigger than the Prime Minister. They just need to put a Haaland story on their website and it goes worldwide. So there is that. And I have a big piece in the paper today about the sort of the backstory of Haaland or his time at Molde. And a central figure in it is this character who he referred to as Ant, who was the club chef at Molde. And so the way it is at Molde, I mean, it's again not unusual at clubs probably in the UK and 1 or 2 here. The players would have breakfast together every morning in the club. They'd walk up to the ground, have their breakfast together, have their lunch after training. And Haaland, the whole story was that when he arrived in Molde, he didn't score that much in his first season. He was all skin and bone. He, you could see he had physical potential, but he never really put it all together. And they had him on a strength and conditioning thing, but he had this amazing relationship with the club chef, who's I think she's 60, sort of a real maternal figure, and you just see her there in the kitchen. Like, I walked in the other night, it's where the press room was, the kitchen. She's just going around with trays for food, with the food for the players, for hospitality. But there's no airs and graces here. Like, apparently this place where they have breakfast every morning, the members of the public just come in and sit around them and can just sit with the players, have a chat. It's so low maintenance. It's so not these layers of minders that you would have around Haaland in his life now. And he had a really special relationship with her, like that she sent him lunch home to his apartment every day, meatballs and chocolate cake and whatever he wanted, and they've kept in touch, and she been a big figure in his life. So they have a documentary crews coming to try and film the place, and so there is a little bit of that. But yeah, in saying that, I'm not walking around the place and seeing posters and photos of him everywhere.
But they have much stuff around the stadium of him, like imagery.
Not that I've seen. Not that I've seen.
Academy,
no, but maybe they do. Maybe they do. I didn't see that, but I mean, the stadium itself, bizarrely, is actually. I don't think the facilities are terrific below the ground as such. You might hear that in due course. The talent might be better in some ways, dressing rooms and that type of thing. But it's in some ways there's a certain charm in that like everyone you meet does have a Haaland story. Like everyone you talk to, because he was just walking around this quiet town all the time, and by the end of it, he'd grown into this monster. I think he grew 8 to 12 centimeters when he was there. Like the ball boys at the start, they were just looking up in awe at this monster towering over them. And there's this famous game that they speak about where they played against Bergen. I watched the goals back, and I'd sort of recommend anyone to do it. It was July 2018. It was the same week Gavin Bazunu ironically saved that penalty in Cork.
Wow.
And he had his breakthrough, and they're both playing against each other today. That was sort of half the premise for the piece today. But Haaland scores 4 goals in the first 21 minutes of the game. Now, the fourth one was a penalty. But Brann were the league leaders. They had the best defence in the country. Haaland hadn't scored that many goals all season. In training the day before, the story goes, he couldn't hit a barn door. He was just dreadful. Solskjaer took him aside and said, listen, it's going to happen. Trust me, it'll happen. And he scores the goals in the manner that he scores goals now, where he just looks unstoppable. And suddenly everyone was like, oh, hang on. They thought he was a good player, as the local hack said to me, but they never thought this is the best player in the world that's in our midst. And yet, from that point onwards, the rest is history, I suppose.
Goals in the Premier League. Bournemouth have turned it around 2-1 against Leicester now, with goals from Philip Billing and Ryan Christie. 73 minutes on the watch, 2-1 to the Cherries at the Vitality Stadium. We've had a second goal for Chelsea against Wolves. The first one was from Kai Havertz, and Christian Pulisic, coming into the team today, has got the second at Stamford Bridge. Manchester City 4, Southampton 0. Haaland with the fourth goal after earlier goals from Cancelo, Foden and Riyad Mahrez. And Newcastle 3, Brentford 1. Bruno Guimaraes with a second goal. Ivan Toney had pulled one back for Brentford. In the Championship, Birmingham 2, Bristol City 0. Blackburn 2, Rotherham 0. Blackpool 1, Watford 1. Coventry 0, Burnley 1. It is Millwall 2, Middlesbrough 0. Norwich 1, Preston 2. Stoke 2, Sheffield United 1. Swansea 2, Sunderland 1. West Brom 0, Luton 0. And Wigan 0, Cardiff 1. Earlier in Scotland, Celtic beat St Johnstone 2-1. At the moment, Rangers lead St Mirren by 3-0.
That Bournemouth turnaround, JD, is, I mean, if Leicester are to lose there...
Yeah, I thought Leicester would win this.
After nearly
pick,
it was on the Market Card podcast, but also Big Palace tomorrow against Leeds.
They scored twice in the space of 3 minutes, and you're just looking...
Can't afford to get rid of Rodgers, though, it seems.
If this were to say it as it is...
I think they'll be okay. I think there are teams around them that are worse than them.
I done the game for off the ball against them, against Brighton, and they were horrific.
Yeah, I don't know. I think
I'm worried about the goalkeeper as well.
Yeah, Danny Ward. I think the owner coming in, though, boosted them during the week, and I do think they'll be okay. I just think there are worse teams around them.
What odds did you have gotten?
The Forest fella, Cooper, getting a new contract. Well, he was on a shaky peg there last week.
That was a great story, actually. That would renew your faith in humanity, to be honest.
Palace, Wolves and Leicester in the live table are all in the bottom 4 at the moment.
Palace will be good. I think Palace are a good team. They're far better than they've been shown, in my view. So you're in Frankfurt.
I am. I was going to say about the Forest one. It'll renew my faith in humanity if he's still there in 6 months' time.
Yeah,
I hope he is.
Have you lost faith in humanity?
Yeah.
Well, not like you, Johnny. They've changed their entire squad pretty much for us. So I don't know. I'm not sure if they're the bastions of continuity. But no, I am in Frankfurt, John. In your neck of the woods, of course. Yeah, I haven't seen your footprint around the place.
No, it's like the Yeti. It's like Yeti. Although, it's something.
For some reason,
shadow on a still bar.
The abominable Duggan.
Although obviously, I mean, I did hear someone earlier saying they met a guy during the week who was commentating loudly on horse races and doing golf tips.
Yeah,
so maybe that was you.
Well,
maybe that was you.
No. I was Compass Mentis. Sorry, it wasn't me. It was Compass Mentis. I've never seen anything like it.
We're
folks.
all watching the golf here. They're all watching the golf.
No, just the way, because I was in the Spurs end. There's only 2,000 of us. I got a ticket for the Spurs end. So you're told to go to a designated pub. Now, I haven't been to many away days, like a really with the diehards. So to go to O'Reilly's pub in Frankfurt, and there's 2,000 Spurs fans, there's all the English flags, and I met two lads from Dublin. So Gavin, who works actually with Bohemians, the underage women's team, as a coach there, and Brian. So you meet your own pretty much soon enough. We met a West Ham fan as well, who's working over in Germany, and there's a huge amount of riot police. And you're kind of feeling, well, this is kind of a bit exciting in a weird way.
Because you're with the English, John.
Well, I don't know about that. And then you're told, okay, there's a massive loudspeaker. You're going on this special train to the stadium train station. You all go on that train. There's massive chantings, and it's like some of it is completely outrageously inappropriate, and some of it is extremely funny. And I can't repeat. And then there's some clean stuff as well. And
thrown in there,
and you're just really you're sensing the sense of tribe, you know. Then you get off, and then you're in Frankfurt to get to the Waldstadion, or the new stadium as it now known, the Deutsche Bank Arena. You have to walk through a forest, so it's almost like going through Ticknock for 15 minutes. And you come out at Lansdowne Road. So it's a fascinating experience for anybody who goes to Bundesliga games, to an away game at Frankfurt. And then once you get into the ground, everybody's just there mingling together. And I just found that absolutely fascinating, that it's almost like this is the designated,
So you just didn't have a place in the stadium just for Spurs fans?
There was an area, but everybody was outside just having a beer and like having a hot dog or whatever. And the Frankfurt fans, everybody's just walking around each other. Yeah. So I think it's because they don't want isolated incidents in the city in the day.
Sorry, Judy, I got to interrupt you here.
Yeah.
And Mike from my Clane Wheeler cycling group has texted me, and we need to give up on punditry. We absolutely just need to give up. Matt Doherty starts for Spurs today.
There you go.
Like what? Like he was literally done 10 minutes ago.
But isn't
now
that the whole point of having a living room conversation?
Unbelievable. He's actually starting.
Well, there you go.
What is the man managing that?
Well, Emerson is suspended, first of all. So who's he going to pick? Sessegnon, but he doesn't have that many options. He doesn't want to play Jet Spence, so you can understand why.
I want to watch this game.
What was it like in the ground then?
It was great. Like the fantastic atmosphere in Frankfurt. They're like on the other end of the pitch. They're waving flags. Whoever's waving the flags, they're waving flags for the whole game.
It's amazing.
Is that the big huge ones that they have at the waist?
They don't stop waving the flags until like for the whole game. So how can you see some of the match? I found that a bit odd.
Do you find you're a child again in an experience like that, where that excitement of going to a big game, and you know when it was such a fresh thing when you were young?
Yeah, you feel like you're in a terrace, even though you're not. And actually you were in a terrace because it's all standing in Frankfurt in Germany. But you know, you go to a Gaelic Games match, or you get like it's a very different experience. You go to a Gaelic Games match, it's all to me about the carvery and the kind of the hanging around the pubs, and then you go into Croke Park. But you don't have that sense of being the underdog and then going with the underdog and feeling like, you know, like when we left the stadium, all you could see was these massive lights in the distance, and you're walking through a forest, and they all start singing Tottenham in the woods, you know, all that kind of stuff. So you really feel part of something that you wouldn't feel if you're in the corporate area.
Oh yeah.
You know, so
I think Gaelic Games is all about the carvery.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, this is
that's a left field one.
Yeah, it is. But I don't know, folks out there. I got a lot of tweets during the week. 53106 on away days. Really, really funny stuff from like USA 94 and you know, people like tweeting in about, you know, just really interesting experiences. You must have had, Dan, Johnny, good away days, even if you're not having the journalist hat on.
Well, mine would have involved just following Go United. When I was a kid, I went to all the games in one season, home and away. I don't know how I did the Leaving Cert that year or whatever, and I remember going to see them beat St. Pat's in the FAI Cup quarter-final after extra time, midweek, and had to be at school the next day. That was an away game in Dublin. Going up to Dalymount to see Kieran Foley thrown up front as a defender, got a hat-trick. Gone up to the Brandywell on a Thursday. I think there were two of us in the whole ground, and you know, getting hammered. Going into the shed in Cork and getting bottles thrown at us because we were away fans, and quickly leaving the shed. Great memories. Absolutely love away days in the League of Ireland.
You've really sold it, Johnny. You've really sold it.
No, yeah, that's it. Yeah, that'd be on a poster.
Congratulations to Cork as well, obviously, on winning the first division.
53106, there's no comparison between Dundalk and Rovers, as Dundalk were physically stronger. Johnny's to realise that professional football is a business. Money is important if you want to have a future.
Who's that guy? That was me. Did I tweet that?
Yeah, probably right, yeah.
Let's also not forget that Glenavon beat Malta at home only 4 years ago. Point is, although they're decent, Malta are certainly not world beaters. Here's to hoping that on Thursday in Tallaght we'll see a serious reaction from Rovers to Thursday's embarrassing performance. And can somebody just mark a Haaland, man mark him GA style? That's another one of our...
Well, the goal he got there, JD, the goal he got there...
Yes, no.
Yeah, exactly.
The last goal he got was, as I said, was very similar to this goal he got in the second half in the derby, where he pulled back and there's nothing, you just cannot defend that. So he kind of makes a run and then takes a step back and he's just there to...
Do you know what? He makes these runs, and even as you're coaching kids, you say, make your pre-movements that believable that's what, so if you want the short, you're going to run long to then drop in.
Is this the Graham Gartland skill?
No, this is just like, so you're saying to him, like, if you want it long, you're going to really show for a short and then spin, but make the movements believable that defenders think he really wants that.
Bit of a bluff.
He does that with every movement he does. There's just such an aggression to it, and an enthusiasm to every movement that he does that you nearly, as the defender, you have to react to it. You have to go, well, he could actually get this defeat. I need to follow him in here. He looks like he really wants it. I've never seen a fella complete the runs that he does with such an aggression.
Okay, got to take a break. We'll come back with Dan because there's interesting breaking news that UEFA has decided against the expansion of the Euros, so it'll remain at 24 teams when we hold it in 2028 with England, and that's pretty much to be confirmed. And also we'll talk to Dan about our expectations for tomorrow's European draw. Any away days, folks, you've been on, good away days. Might get some text read out there between now and 5 on Football Saturday here on Off the Ball on News Talk. Saturday here on News Talk, John Duggan with you through to 5 on Football Saturday. Graham Gartland in studio with Johnny Ward and Dan McDonnell on the line from Frankfurt. Troy Parrott has scored. First game of the season that he scored a goal in for Preston, and it's looking like the winner away to Norwich. 3-2 they lead. And also Callum Robinson on the mark for Cardiff today away to Wigan. 2-0 they lead as well. It's West Brom 0, Luton 0, Swansea 2, Sunderland 1, Stoke 2, Sheffield United 1, Millwall 2, Middlesbrough 0, Coventry 0, Burnley 1, Blackpool 2, Watford 1, Blackburn 3, Rotherham 0, Birmingham 3, Bristol City 0. In the Premier League, Bournemouth 2, Leicester 1, Chelsea 2, Wolves 0. Erling Haaland 15 goals this season, scoring in Man City's lead over Southampton 4-0. Newcastle 4 now, Brentford 1. Miguel Almiron with his third goal in his 2 games now in the Premier League, scored twice against Fulham last week. Spurs against Brighton at 5:30. So Dan and Frankfurt, what do we hope for in this draw tomorrow morning, is it?
Yeah, tomorrow morning 11 a.m. Some good luck. I actually see Troy Parrott apparently injured himself in the celebrations and has gone off. But anyway, thankfully there's no important Ireland games for some time, so it's not an injury concern news. Yeah, it's 11 a.m. this morning. Tomorrow morning, JD, as you said. Stephen Kenny was actually on my flight this morning.
Oh, nice chat. So,
just a brief chat before taking off. But
was he reading the Irish Indo, was he?
Probably on his phone, JD. I know, just a brief chat, and I think I saw a few other Irish people on the flight were sort of chatting to him, just fans or whatever, as we were getting our bus from the plane to the terminal. So there is a load of FEI people who come over, I think, yesterday for some various business around this. There's obviously things going on today. You mentioned a 24-team tournaments and so on and so forth, debates around that. But look, Ireland, I mean, to put it simply, Ireland are third seeds. Being third seeds is tricky because there's a real danger. You know, the 2 higher ranked teams could be two very strong, highly ranked teams. The main thing to look out for in the draw is that France and England are second seeds because of their Nations League performance, because the Nations League determines the pots. And I mean, pot 1 is pretty much all strong sides. There's 1 or 2 in there like Hungary you wouldn't mind drawing probably, and maybe 1 or 2 others that might be regressive. But what you don't want is to get a good pot 1 team and then get France or England with a 2, because then you're looking into a really, really challenging 2023. So you have to look below you as well. There's like Greece in pot 4, Georgia, Turkey, and even Slovakia, Northern Ireland in pot 5. So there's a sort of a, I mean, you probably accept with this thing and with the top 2 automatically qualifying that you're going to get 1 strong side. You expect to get one big gun, but there's always the hope with 2 going through. It's the difference from the World Cup that, you know, there's a second automatic spot there, and you got to hope that if you're encountering someone like Finland or Bosnia or Israel, or maybe even Wales or Scotland, even though they're ahead of Ireland right now, than France and England. That's the main thing.
And this decision about the 24 teams, like if we do host, do we qualify? Like, because this, I think, was it not maybe 5 hosts? Would we have to qualify?
Yeah,
for 2028?
Oh, we would have to qualify. Yeah,
Right.
we would have to qualify. I can't see any way they'd let 5 teams in, even with 32. No, I think it was Martin Ziegler a couple of weeks back. He's very good on this. Speculated that the sort of inevitable rise, that these major tournaments all seem to expand. You know, just there's no way of stopping them. But it seems like the mood music in UEFA changed, and maybe they were realising that if you went from 24 to 32, then qualifying would be a complete farce, and the value of the TV rights and all of that would be compromised. I understand that for a lot of countries, qualifying is not that interesting, but even I'm talking there now about Ireland's situation, there's an element of jeopardy around this draw. If you have a 32-team tournament, it's great in the sense of, like, you know, more chance of being involved in the competition. But obviously the tension and the qualifying almost becomes non-existent for at the top end of it. Now, I will say, having never seen Ireland play in a World Cup, I would support the expansion of that to 128 teams if necessary. Yeah. But the Euros, I think
we qualified, Dan?
16 was probably fine. 24. I don't know, Johnny, because this is the most important draw of them all, like of Stephen Kenny's life. I mean, I can sit here and think, I think Ireland will be fine next year. I'd give them a strong chance of qualifying.
If we had a 128-team World Cup, do you think?
Sorry. I think we do it. Yeah, no, I think we do.
But see that, Dan, see on the fact that you're trying to who we get and what avoiding pots.
Yeah.
But it's always been the teams below us that we've struggled against in the last 3 years.
We struggle against the teams above us.
I know that, but like what I'm saying is, like, the teams are expected
we've
to
been
be
plucky against the teams above
we
us.
generally just struggle.
Our performances against the teams above us have been good.
We punch above our weight.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Exactly. Our performance, we mightn't beat them.
Nothing wrong with the Scotland game. Nothing wrong with losing Scotland.
But our performance was good in that. But then you go and play Armenia, and our performance isn't good, even though you win.
You need to beat the weaker teams at home, especially.
But that comes from the back of performances. You're not going to beat them if you don't perform. That's what it has to come down to.
By the way, goals in the Premier League: 5-1 to Newcastle now against Brentford. Ethan Pinnock own goal, and Chelsea 3, Wolves 0. Armando Baroya for pensioners, so he's got off the mark. Go on, Dan.
Yeah, there's a mad discrepancy between these pots because of the Nations League, and Graham is right. Like, I mean, if Ireland can take care of pot 4 and pot 5, you know, and if they get a 6th team, which I think if they did, they definitely beat them. You know, then you have a platform that you have a go at the top 2. And it's Azerbaijan, Luxembourg. You look at they're the teams that are in pot 4 this time. The Faroes are in pot 4. You could have the Faroes from pot 4 and Gibraltar from pot 5, or you could have Turkey and Slovakia. You know, it's a really random, because the Nations League promotion relegation has just has created a scenario where you look at it tomorrow and there'll probably be some very soft groups, and then there'll be a couple of stinkers. And Stephen Kenny's priority, I suppose, the hope is to be in one of the soft ones, or even something in between. And I think as well, the big thing as well, it's the order of fixtures too, which is also computer, you know, or UEFA generated now anyway. Clearly, like, Stephen Kenny has started all of his campaigns badly. No one can argue that. And any scenario where they could get points on the board early and just sort of relax and take a breath and stop tonight, I think that would be important. And I mean, Ireland have dropped points against lower teams earlier on, so they have had chances to do that. But if they could avoid playing a top seed or a top 2 seed next March and try and get some momentum going that way, you know, that could be a refreshing difference.
You put something out a while ago there, Dan, about Ian Ryan and the Bowes situation.
Oh God, yeah. Thanks for dropping that one on me, Gareth. How long have we got?
You got about 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
I wanted to say something.
Sorry, Johnny.
Bloody hell.
I would say
you can say it in the pub.
I'll say everything's a bit up in the air generally with the Bowes job. I don't expect any appointments today anyway. So it seems to be chopping and changing. But Johnny's got something to say, so it's probably
Johnny,
better.
this is your big moment.
Yeah,
we haven't mentioned last night the grudge game. The Dundalk goal against Pats,
it was great.
Like the battle for third is real. It's on, and obviously you had the Stephen O'Donnell situation in the off season. It was as acrimonious a departure as we've seen really in Ireland, and Pat's got a goal, JD, almost the last kick
I
of the
saw
game.
it, I was watching on
the game. But one thing, if you watch this, right, Sam Curtis is 16 years of age. Watch his tackle to set up his tackle and his pass. And I know he's going to leave, like he's probably going to go to a big club in England, possibly a club we're watching right now. He's going to be a hell of a talent, I think. But for 16 years of age, in a game of that importance, and look at the Pats fans, the way they celebrated. I mean,
that was a great goal, actually.
It was amazing, and I'm sure it was gut-wrenching for Dundalk, who still have like a very strong position of finishing third. But it was compelling stuff. It was compelling.
Speaking of away days, if people watch the video of that goal, what you have to look out for is that there's a porta cabin behind the goal, which is like the toilet. So when Pats score, you can see there's a massive celebration, and 4 lads come sprinting out of the toilet to celebrate, having not seen a thing.
The steward tried to hold the gate closed as well. And
lads coming out of a porta cabin is a little bit alarming, actually.
They have to go to the toilet.
I hope they were finished.
The gate open and they're running out. There was one steward there, like just trying to be his hands out.
Hashtag away days.
Yeah.
Dan, thanks so much, and enjoy Frankfurt. Enjoy the best Wursten town. It's worth checking out, and the old Binding Pilsner.
If they ask me do I know a man called John Duggan, I'll doubt your evidence of your midweek excursion being very respectable, John.
Okay.
We'll see.
Enjoy, Dan. See you.
Thank you, John.
Okay, Graham and Johnny, thanks so much, folks, for coming in.
Pleasure.
Full-time, Chelsea 3, Wolves 0. Full-time, Manchester City 4, Southampton 0, with Erling Haaland's 15th goal of the season, one of them. Newcastle 5, Brentford 1. It's finished. Bournemouth have beaten Leicester 2-1. Brighton and Spurs kick off at 5:30 in the Championship. Latest scores: Birmingham 3, Bristol City 0. Blackburn 3, Rotherham 0. It is Blackpool 3, Watford 1. Latest: Coventry 0, Burnley 1. Finished: Millwall 2, Middlesbrough 0. A goal has just gone in. He's always subject to VAR. Norwich 3, Preston 3. So Troy Parrott wasn't the winner.
Norwich 3, Preston 3. Wow.
Yes.
Get Loro back on and be delighted.
Stoke 3, Sheffield United 1. Swansea 2, Sunderland 1. All latest scores: West Brom 0, Luton 0. And Wigan 1, Cardiff 2. In Scotland, Celtic 1 in injury time against St Johnstone earlier, 2-1. Hibernian 1, Motherwell 0. Livingston 0. Ross County 1 as full-time, and Rangers have beaten St Mirren by 4-0. Thank you so much, folks out there across the country, for listening today. Don't forget, we're back tomorrow 1 to 7 here on News Talk. Joe Malloy in the chair for Off the Ball. We'll showcase 2 live and exclusive commentary games in the Premier League. First up at 2, Crystal Palace versus Leeds. Nathan Murphy and Brian Kerr will call that one. Then Stephen Doyle and Kenny Cunningham describing the action between Arsenal and Liverpool. That showdown kicking off at 4:30. We'll also have the Sunday pay-per-view across our digital and social channels from 11:30. So to be sure to join Joe tomorrow for some great commentaries and conversation. If you missed any of the Saturday panel on Respecting the Sidelines, or of any of OTB Football Saturday with Laro, Graham Gartland, Dan and Johnny, you can find the podcasts of our content on the OTB Sports app, or be sure to listen back wherever you get your pods. Thanks so much for listening across Ireland on News Talk here today. We'll speak soon. Bye-bye.